what's going on in Australia.
I can't tell you how proud I am of our state.
You need to shoot the wrong way!
The compassion.
What are you doing? What the are you doing? Get off me! Get off!
What is going on? They're mandating these vaccines.
Through the Fair Work advice, which is available on the Fair Work website. Remembering, we do not have a mandatory vaccination policy in this country. We do not have that. We are not proposing to have that. That is not changing.
Well, I'm the leader of the state.
And the way Dan Andrews is speaking in the post that I see...
I don't know, I've made this point many times, but I want to just remind people that it's about people. I'm not looking to exempt anyone.
Stop it.
I mean, it's disgusting to see this Premier of Victoria.
I signed up to a national plan to vaccinate our nation. Again, vaccination has been mandatory.
The way he's just overriding federal law.
Well, I'm the leader of the state. I'm not looking to exempt anyone.
Stop it.
And making it that you have to go and get this vaccine.
Today I'm mandating people getting vaccinated.
Stop it.
Should be choice. So he's making it that...
No one's exempt from the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. Today I'm stopping people going to work.
This is an absolute overreach by the Victorian government.
I'm not taking lectures on freedom.
My policy has always been that this is not a compulsory vaccination program.
Well, then they won't be going to work.
There's going to be segregation in the Victorian society.
Well, we have a broad principle with our vaccination program that the vaccines are both free, but they're also voluntary.
So it's their way of trying to create division and separation in society. Then it takes the blames away from the government.
Stop it. And I've got to say, it's been one of the most disappointing things I've seen in Australian behaviour in response to this crisis.
That could cause some issues.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
With the way things will flow.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Into the future, because they're trying to pit the people against each other.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
That's a tactic that governments of the world use. They like to pit people against each other, so it creates, we'll say, civil unrest.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Maybe not a civil war, but maybe civil unrest.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
And there will be civil unrest as a result of it.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Because they are trying to make a two-tier society.
Is one example of the worst of the worst.
So a national manhunt for a man who sneezed in an elevator. That's the state of play in modern-day Australia.
Vaccinated, unvaccinated. Vaccinated, unvaccinated. Vaccinated, unvaccinated. Vaccinated, unvaccinated.
To push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Stop it.
I currently reside in Western Australia. Which there is no immediate threat of COVID at this stage because we've kept our borders well and truly locked.
Stop it.
It's a bit different over there in the eastern states of Australia.
Publicly, Australia's leaders are still pretending that vaccination status matters. In New South Wales, again in eastern Australia, one official promised that the unvaccinated will be allowed to retain their freedom.
The message to the unvaccinated is that you will not achieve any further freedom unless you get vaccinated. And a further and final message to regional New South Wales. There will be individuals in regional rural New South Wales who choose not to be vaccinated who will lose their freedoms.
So over here in the West, we have had pretty good livelihoods based on no real lockdowns and so forth. But
in New South Wales, why do they want open borders in Western Australia if closing the borders actually has kept the population safe? Well, they want open borders there for the same reason they want it here. In New South Wales, one official, the state's health officer, explained it out loud. Watch.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the New World Order.
I feel it's coming once Australia opens up.
The New World Order. She said it out loud. This is a really interesting story, what's happening in Australia.
And WA will have to experience a bit of the situations that are occurring like what's in the East. Lockdowns.
Section 14 states that every person has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, religion and belief, and that a person must not be coerced or restrained in a way that limits his or her freedom to have or adopt a religion or belief in observance or practice.
Are they going to implement unvaccinated versus vaccinated? I can understand people might not be able to travel or go interstate or go overseas.
Today's motion infringes a new human right, Section 18, the right to participate in public life.
but the whole work situation, having to be vaccinated before you enter your workplace.
The ability to limit the right to not be subjected to medical treatment without full, free and informed consent is totally out of step with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which states that this right is non-derogable, meaning it cannot be limited in any way.
It's going to be a major factor in the way companies evolve into the future anyway. So
I would like to point out that those who vote in favour of this motion will demonstrate that the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, was being untruthful when he promised vaccinations would be truly voluntary.
I don't think it's going to be very, very promising, that's for sure, because
our amendment is a compromise that respects people's privacy while addressing and improving health and safety. This is the kind of compromise that we should be making so that people making choices about their own bodies are not left feeling like second-class citizens.
It can't end well.
Because coercion is wrong and consent matters.
Can't end well, or the politicians will just have to turn around and say, oh, let's just forget about it. But they're too arrogant to say that because their theory is we are right. So the government's right. The government's always right, you see.
We know already that neither major party truly cares about consent or human rights.
So they're never going to back down and say, oh, let's forget about this divisional society that we've created.
Section 10C states that a person must not be subjected to medical treatment without his or her full, free and informed consent.
So, what will be the future?
Because vaccination is a medical procedure, forcing a person to be vaccinated against his or her will is a clear violation of this right.
There is definitely something in this situation that is happening worldwide. There is something gone beyond the health of the people. It's gone beyond.
Requiring that a person may not travel to his or her place of employment without being vaccinated limits this right.
That means they're not really vaccinated anymore because they have to get the booster.
Requiring that a person may not travel to his or her place of employment without being vaccinated limits this right.
But if someone just had COVID and was unvaccinated a month ago, they're not allowed to go anywhere in society, but they're...
Section 13 states that a person has the right to not have his or her privacy unlawfully or arbitrarily interfered with. Requiring a person to disclose his or her vaccination status to an employer or a government agency potentially limits this right.
Thanks for watching this Hang Loose Recluse production. Thank you.
Many have tried to smear us as extremists, when in reality we have merely been defending basic human rights. If this is the reason that we are to be suspended from Parliament, it would be right to ask the question, who are really the extremists?
In just 2 years, the Australian police went from raiding newsrooms to beating people in the streets. So maybe the lesson is things can change very quickly. One moment, the English-speaking world is mocking China for being dystopian and autocratic. The next moment, they're aping China and hunting people down who are 2 blocks from their own homes and smoking a cigarette.